they do that computation of,
I'll call the meeting to order. It is now 5:30. Number 2 on the agenda is adjustments, and there are none. We'll go to period of public participation on items of this agenda. I hate to be sitting by you. Is there anyone wishing to address the board this evening? Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of minutes of meeting 1036, which was July 14, 2020. We need to do those minutes.
I hope we approve the minutes of the meeting at 10:36.
Okay, Gerard. Second by Lena. Is there any, are there any questions or observations in the minutes? If not, we'll take a vote in favor. All in favor? I think.
Yeah, Jean.
She's in.
She was in favor.
Okay, the next, on the agenda is the approval of the financial statements, and that's June 2020. You should have received that in your packet. And I believe we also have July.
yeah, should give you June and July, and
Yeah.
the June ones are not the final ones, they're preliminary ones, but you can. We'll give you final ones.
So we can approve both.
You can approve both.
Okay. So then we will need a motion to approve the June and July financial statements.
I
Gerard,
hope that we approve the June to July financial statement.
and Josh, second by Josh. Are there any questions? If not, we'll take a vote in favor. All in favor. Okay, the next item is, then will update us on the COVID-19 relief funds.
Yep, so in your packet, you should have had this DOE media release document. Basically, it's just a summary from the department about Governor Mills' announcement last Friday about the CRF funds. This is separate from what we heard before as the CARES funds, although these do fall under CARES as well. The CRF funds is a separate round of money. 165 million that went to the state of Maine, and then it was divided, really divided equitably amongst the state. A lot of us were very surprised at how the way that was allocated was so much clearer. So they used a base factor, then they factored in special education, ELL learners, disadvantaged, homeless, substitutes, software system, technology funding, PPE, health assessment, cleaning supplies, transportation, lunch, and then they came up with an allocation. Your allocation for MSAD33 is $266,595.45 of CRF funds. That's in addition to the $47,609.68 you have for the CARES funding, the ESSR funding. So with this CRF funds, couple of requirements. It cannot be spent on something you budgeted for in your regular budget from last year or this year. And the reason I say last year is because you can go back and you can actually use these funds for anything that happened from March 1st up until current that is specific to the coronavirus. So if we have any costs that we can associate to the coronavirus, those can be reimbursed under the CRF funds, and any funds moving forward. We have to have an application in to the DOE by by August 31st of how we're going to use our $266,000. And we have up till December 31st to spend the money after we've done that. So it's a lot of spending in a little amount of time, all very specific to the CRF fund. So we've been doing some brainstorming. Obviously, the most obvious things, PPE, and you probably noticed the health monitoring system here that's in the corner of the tech center. We've got one of those for each of the buildings where temperature scans can happen instantly. Different things like that, cleaning supplies. But we are also going to ask for some very important things later in the meeting that we'd like to use these funds for, that are going to help in the classroom and are going to help with the safety of our students. We are also going to look very carefully at the impact that the coronavirus has on transportation of students in this district. We know right now that we can put, the new guidance is 1 child per seat in a bus. That means we can put 26 kids in a bus. We may need another bus because I don't know if we're going to be able to transport other kids. If we can demonstrate a need for a bus because of the pandemic, we may be able to buy a bus for 33 using the CRF funds. So we're going to get really creative in how the impact is hitting us. We want to look at the safety of your buildings, the entryway to Dr. Levac's school and Wisdom currently do not have safety vestibules. And if we want to have a safety system where possibly an infected person is coming into the building, they've had their health screening, they're infected, we don't want them to have to go further in the school, so we might possibly be able to do some upgrades to the entryways of the building under this as well. So we're going to look at everything, but this is good news for the district that we have this allocation under CRF. Any questions about that? The next thing, you also have another handout in your packet, Governor Mills' statement on revenue forecasting. There was an announcement last week that the state is projecting a loss of $524 million in fiscal year 21, $434 million in fiscal year 22, and $449 in fiscal year 23, primarily because of the loss of business from tourism and travel. So this is a big hit to the state. We had a Zoom meeting, regional superintendents had a Zoom meeting this afternoon at 3 o'clock with the other regional presidents of the 16 counties. And one thing that the commissioner did tell us was that all departments at the DOE level were asked to trim 10% of their budgets. You might hear that coming out in the press very soon. All departments had to trim 10%. Even after the 10% was cut, there's going to be no cut currently to subsidies to the districts. So right now, the districts are not going to get hit with a loss of subsidy from the state, which is good news. So it's a grim picture, but I know the department is really looking hard at where they can cut otherwise. And then they're also doing their own round of grants from the federal government to help with the loss of revenue that's happening to the state of Maine. Any questions on that? Next item I have for you is Valley Unified updates. I did ask Scott Brown for an update on conversations he had told me that he was going to have with the commissioner about our school project. Scott and I connected yesterday and had a short conversation where he basically just said, listen, I've spoken to the commissioner. She still wants to support your project. She knows she has to get up into the valley and talk to you guys about what's going on and answer your questions, but right now she's kind of busy. The state's trying to restart education, and she's just not finding the time to be able to do that, but has made the comment to him that she will be looking into it and looking at her calendar and really trying to get up here and meet with us. I also noticed on the State Board of Education School Construction Committee website that the school committee was having a meeting coming up tomorrow, August 7th, and on their agenda is the Consolidated Integrated 9 through 16 project, which is our project. So I asked him about what the committee was going to be talking about, and he said, it's not your project, it's the Holden project. they need to talk about the Holton project and talk about the one community that backed out of that education service center. So that's all they are talking about. He did say that the education committee has not talked about our project since January, I think, and it's still not on the agenda to talk about because there's nothing to update them about what's going on. So that's all I got for Valley Unified updates from that. Rolling into the next agenda, it's the same topic. Our think tank was supposed to be scheduled this past Tuesday, August 4. I reached out to your think tank members and asked them if we should table it because we would have time to speak at this board meeting before doing so. And we agreed. We rescheduled for next Monday, the 10th, I think Monday is. But since then, MSAD33 had a meeting last night. They discussed this as well, and they feel that that they don't know that there's going to be a lot of momentum gained specific to their to what's important to them at a think tank level. I think they're looking more at having discussions board to board about what's really important. So they'd like to rethink their strategy on that, if you will. Not that the conversations aren't important. I think they are, but I think we realize that the think tank has no jurisdiction to do anything except convey messages, and it becomes very difficult to do that when board meetings are set at different times, and there's other pressing matters that occur that sometimes don't allow us to have those think tank conversations. I apologize to all of you that we haven't had the opportunity to have those conversations earlier. We had a few 3-4 board meetings there that the budget was pressing, and we had a harvest debate here that was far more pressing. So for me, it kind of slipped my mind to prioritize that. But in any case, I think at this time I'm going to recommend, and I already have to Lena and Josh, that we do not hold the think tank next Monday, and we discuss possibly what we want to do as a board in order to make sure that what's important to you guys are coming across, just as MSAD33 is preparing to do. And I'm also going to recommend the same thing to Madawaska. I think it's important that everybody advocates for what's important to them. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we really don't want to lose this project. So it will take a lot of cooperation. And I know we've said that all along, but I think now more than ever, where you do have one community who is concerned that their straw poll was not a clear indication one way or another, I think they feel that they need to do a little bit more to wrap their heads around that. So I don't know if you guys want to talk more on that. That's what I have to do.
I don't know what we can do to, I think no matter what we do, it won't make any issue. I guess I'm just gonna say, no matter what we do, it won't make that community happy. We have given a lot, we have tried to work with them. If it's not important, it's not gonna fly, that's the attitude we're getting. I guess you gotta give some and take some, and we're not noticing that at all. I know that think tank we could be met, and I said, what would make you happy, and this school was important. So that's what we're looking at. I don't know if we look at legal counseling, see what they would recommend. I think we're in a stalemate, and nothing's gonna happen until we come to some of these conclusions. There was talk about an RSU formation, all the way up from K to 12, and that's not gonna happen. We've already started the project, and it was from 9 to 12. Then we moved it from 7 to 12. We're gonna start losing a lot of trust in our voters. You know, when we, like, Mr. Dugal said at the think tank, we started playing football, and now we're down to golf. We're moving the ball down the line in the wrong direction. I know for a fact, no town's gonna wanna give up the control of their elementary schools, and that's their right.
And that was a promise we made,
Yes.
and we were very strong on that promise when we decided to go into this, and I think it's important for our community that we stick to that. But even, if you're not done, go ahead.
Well, I don't mind doing, I wanna do an RSU to get this going, but it's gonna have to be from what the voters do, which is a 7 to 12 RSU.
If that's even possible, because that was something we went back for questions, right?
Yeah, and that, the response that we got on that was, that's an easy change to the current law, and the current law can actually be interpreted to allow for that, so they don't see that as an issue.
So that brings me to where this think tank meeting that we had, we left the think tank meeting, and I felt like it was going to be, we're thinking about it, and we're going back to our board to discuss what was talked about and kind of discuss where we want to go from there. And because, like Ben said, there was just more pressing matters, we didn't get to that part. So as far as I'm concerned, our board is still open to work with our partners and to hear sides and to see what we can do to work together. But it also struck me funny last night when I heard that it sounded like the partners didn't want to work with that particular town, and that makes us look like we're not willing to work, but that's not the fact at all. So I think we need to seek legal advice so that way it can be fair on all ends.
You know, I know they have an issue with the voting power of Valley Unified. I know last night there was talks about, there was 6-3 voting for a specific chairperson. And that's how it's gonna be down the line. Well, that's not true. You know, everybody deserves a fair chance to be what they want on the board. And, you know, I think this is the relationship we're gonna get. And we're gonna have to rethink this a little bit. We are all open to work with this. I have not heard anybody say they're not wanting.
Unless we miss something between then and now, we're willing to work because we know we want the big school to happen. That's there for our children.
It would be foolish to lose this money for this school and the opportunity to get both in the region, economically, and one of the best educations we can offer our kids. And we always struggle to get, and this is something, it's a golden egg that we can have. Why would anybody in there right now want to throw that? And just to give it to a different community. I mean, I think we're all in it to get this school, but we need every partner to be open about it. And, you know, not hold these barriers, well, if it's not here, forget it. Last night, one board member from 27 said it, the Frenchville site is dead. So now we're gonna spend an additional $2 million to get another site selection to get it done. And if it's the same result, it's still gonna be a moot point. So unless they get what they want, it's not gonna happen. And I think, you know, it's time to say it how it is. It's what it is. I think now we need to start looking at legal advice, to see what we can do so we don't lose this project. Because this is an amazing opportunity for the valley. You know, I hear all the time, tax money never comes here, it's always downstate. We have a perfect opportunity to use tax money that's given to us. So yeah, we're gonna fight about it, where the school is located. This building here was built here with the intentions of having a regional high school and making it a central location. What has changed? Those are just facts. I don't know, Elena.
Well, I think you said it best when you said that they're in a relationship and a partnership. There's some give and take, and if it's going to be take on one end and no balance in between amongst all the communities, it's a tough position and relationship to continue.
And to go out and say the opposite way last night publicly is not correct. I mean, that's not correct. We are all willing to work with that.
Thank you very much. Josh, anything to add, Ben?
It's a very difficult position for me to be in. I can't advocate one way or the other. I don't get the sense, in speaking with Madawaska, speaking with you all, speaking with 27, I don't get the sense that the control of elementary school is something that's really high up on the priority list. I think that was thrown out as a solution to simplify the process. If we're gonna have an RSU, why don't we just have one RSU instead of separate boards? But I don't think that's the major thing. I think some of the major points, obviously for you guys, it's the site because it's been chosen. Madawaska, I think, feels the same way. For 27, they have a community, the largest community in their district, that did not vote in favor of that site. So I think for some of them, they're grappling with what does that mean for their constituents. Whereas, also they have the smaller communities that did support it. So what does that mean? I mean, it couldn't have gone any crazier than a split tie for the vote on that from that district. So that makes it really, really confusing. But I think for them, some of the bigger factors are definitely, and what you heard last night, it's going to be that representative vote, not only on the RSU, but they would prefer to have that on the Valley Unified Board as well, because the Valley Unified Board has the power to bond for this project, and that's concerning to them. I'm hopeful that maybe if the think tank is not the right venue, maybe it's a collaborative board meeting with all three. And we have conversations that way where we have the power to make voting decisions at that if we're all three with our boards, and if we want to look at the interlocal agreement and make some small adjustments as a good show of faith. If the bonding issue is a problem, let's address that. If the budget approval process is a problem, let's address that and start slowly and gain momentum that way. So that would be my advice. But I can't take a side either way.
And I know the new law that comes out with funding that allows any two-thirds or 7/9 to pass it. We could put something in the clause saying that will not happen, it can't happen with this agreement. These are all things we can put into these interlocal agreements where you can stop that from happening. I don't think it would ever happen, but you never know today. I understand their point of that. It was all set until this new law came out that allows the bonding to happen. We could always put something in writing, all parties that this will not happen.
Yeah.
I would be upset with that. I don't think it's great to force another town to honor their financial obligation anyways. That's their town taxpayers that need to do that. Not school.
Any questions?
Do you guys want to give me any advice on how you want me to proceed? Do you want me to proceed what I shared with you and try and get the boards together? Do you want me to connect you with legal for counsel that way? Because we threw out different things there.
Jane, what do you think? You're quiet.
Have there been any other schools that have been in a situation where one party was kind of pulling back like this?
Yeah, the Holton group did have a community withdraw. It doesn't end their service center though, because they had 4 members in the service center and you need at least 3. So the withdrawal of that member doesn't end that agreement. And for them, I think it was just more of it wasn't that they weren't getting along, it was more of, we have to front load X amount of money. They didn't have the same blessing that we did in having grant funds to fund the engineering. So they were having discussions about funding the engineering locally, and that was a deal breaker for them.
And Josh, it sounds like it's just the location of the school more than anything else. Is that correct?
Location and voting power within on the Valley Unified Board, which would tie into the bonding issue. You have two parties that want the bond, and it would pass. So you could potentially force another community on into a bond. So they have some issues as far as voting power without unified bonding and, site.
I don't know. I think at this point, it might not hurt to give some legal advice on where to go next.
I agree.
There are. Josh? I agree also. Okay, we'll continue with our agenda, under old business. And, then we will talk about the reintegration plan.
So hopefully you had a chance to take a look at our reintegration plan a little bit. I have a paper copy for you in front of you, but just don't save that paper copy because this is a working document, and tomorrow it might change, and it probably will. I can tell you that Madawaska approved this plan on Monday, and we've made 2 changes since. So it's not significant changes, but just minor changes. I am sharing the screen so that you guys can see a new website that was launched, www.buesc.org. So Valley Unified Education Service Center.org. Right now, that site is a one-stop shop for everything for school reintegration. So let me just move some of these controls out of the way here. So Valley Unified Education Center school reintegration resources. We have some different resources here for folks. One is, the first one is highlighted by our guide, the guide that's in front of you. We have our main return to classroom instruction framework that takes you to the department's framework for how to do this the right way safely. And it's also what our guide was based off of. We have the American Academy of Pediatrics reopening guide, a very useful guide as well. That discusses a lot about the social and emotional needs of children to be in school. And then obviously the CDC school and child care resources that are all very important. We have an FAQ section. This FAQ was based off of the letter that went out to parents 2 weeks ago when we sent an alert saying our plan is coming out. This is what you can expect in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, do you have questions about the different aspects? So when somebody goes here to physical health and safety, they have a question that they posed, and then they have the answer from Valley Unified on how we're addressing those things. And there's a lot of questions here. There's a lot of answers here. Peter has been wonderful in helping out with this. Sharon has also helped him on some of the sections. So a lot of resources here that, we all have the same questions. So going through this and seeing what people are asking and how we're responding to it is really important to us. And that's for every section of our document. So there's a section on social, emotional, behavioral, mental health, academic learning, hybrid and remote learning, and then other considerations like transportation and school lunch and those type of things. And then we have our outline. This is what was presented to you last meeting, just the outline of our plan. This is what our safe return to school. And then we have our school enrollment forms that are going to be housed here. Your links will go live tomorrow as soon as we hopefully approve the plan tonight. But just to give you an idea of what a form looks like, obviously yours will say Dr. Levac Elementary School and Wisdom Middle High School. We're asking parents to tell us about what their plans are for their children. So we're asking parents to please review the plan, the guide that's in front of you before making your decision. We're asking them to please make a commitment of at least a quarter of the year. And the reason we're asking that is if we have X amount of kids in a classroom and we're shuffling kids and X amount of kids in remote learning, and every week some remote learners are coming back and some in-class learners are going back, it's going to be really hard to try to control that. A little bit easier if kids are going out to remote learning, a little harder if kids are coming back in. So although we're asking them to make this commitment, obviously we'll work with individual families. If it's If it's November 4 and a family wants to come back into school, I think we'll work with, folks. So this is not a hard fast, but we're trying to remind people to understand that we're trying to get them to make a commitment. I want folks to fill in one form per family. And then parents and guardians are encouraged, obviously, to communicate with them. We don't want mom filling out the form and dad filling out the form, then we have duplicates of everything. And then we don't want students to fill the form. Even for seniors, we want the parents to do this as much as we can. So we're collecting parent email address, their name, their residence, phone number, and the name of their child. The reason we need all this is we want to update our emergency alert systems. We want to make sure we have the best phone number for you. We want to make sure we have the best email for you. We want to make sure we know where you live and that's updated so that when we are considering how many kids are riding the bus, we know exactly where the kids are coming from and where they're going. All really important. If we have to pull the plug and go into remote learning on a Tuesday, we want to make sure that the alert that goes out is reaching everybody in the plan. We're collecting the name of the child, the school year of the child, and then we're asking the big question. What are you choosing for the start of the school year? My child will be attending school for in-classroom instruction, following all the guidelines identified in our plan. My child will be participating in remote learning, following the expectations outlined in the plan, or we're going to be homeschooling. And that's just because some folks have said, if this remote learning thing or if school, we're going to start homeschooling. So we're providing them that option here.
Quick question?
Yeah.
So the bottom, the three options you have, where it says my student will be in school following all the guidelines. So early elementary.
Yep.
I guess my question is, how is a first grader, how is a kindergartner, second grader even going to follow the mask wearing, the social distancing when, I don't know, it's just, I don't know.
I don't know either.
So what happens if they don't? Is it gonna be a disciplinary issue? There's such young children.
Could I touch on that?
Sure, Peter.
The discussion we've had is at the elementary school levels, especially the early elementary grades, pre-K through 2. Our expectations are going to be realistic, and our plan is to spend a lot of time, or the plans of the individual schools and their staffs are to spend a lot of time in the early days establishing and practicing standard operating procedures, including mask wear, physical distancing, talking about different ways you can connect with people that you typically do, talking about the fact that even we as adults have to make those adjustments. We're all in it together. And so we're really going to concentrate on reinforcing positive performance and then instructing and constantly, re-instructing and then keeping our expectations realistic and not using fear-based tactics, but just, re-explaining the importance of doing this. This is why we need to do this. And we think with an emphasis on the standard operating procedures, positive reinforcement of positive performance, and then reminders, absent fear-based or consequence-based approaches, unless it's just something so flagrant that we're going to be able to gradually see them be able to meet those expectations on a more consistent basis.
Anyone who's taught elementary school, and I did for 12 years, knows that the first 2 weeks of school are everything. It's all about those routines. It's all about establishing that. And that's not going to change. It's just the routines are very different now. Now we have new routines. Now we have new things that we have to do. And will there be times where, we're seeing ourselves doing this? Absolutely. It's about reminders, and it's about, we're an education system. We're all about teaching. And I think that's going to be our huge focus on the first 2 weeks, if not beyond. It's all those SOPs. And we're realistic too. I need a mask break. So these kids are going to need a mask break. So we're going to build in mask breaks. There's going to be mask breaks where you have a 6-foot distance at a time, and every teacher is going to be encouraged to look carefully at how they're going to create that Maybe they have a mask break, area of their classroom, or maybe they're going outside every X amount of time for the mask break real quick, and that type of thing. So it's going to be a lot of modeling. It's going to be a lot of routines. Our 4-year-olds pre-Ks, it's a recommendation, not a requirement from the DOE. But we're still going to educate and model and hope that they're doing even at that level. But it is something that the department is asking us, not asking us, requiring us to do, especially if we're going to access these CRF funds. We have to make a promise that our school will be following those guidelines. It won't be easy.
I guess we also gotta realize that we have an obligation to keep the students safe, but we also have an obligation to keep the staff safe. So we need to make sure that all parties, students and staff, are wearing their masks. The staff are just as important, that staff will not teach the children.
Right.
So,
And we know enough now that this is the safest thing for us. Dr. Hart is here. Dr. Hart is our health advisor for our new partnership with Northern Maine Medical Center. She's been wonderful in answering our questions on the fly. She's come to board meetings, and she's just been a wealth of knowledge. So throughout this, if you have health-related questions, Dr. Hart is here to address that, and she will chime in on certain parts of the presentation as well. Thank you for being here. So you're answering this question. Let's say you are sending your child to school with the social distancing guidelines being followed and everything. We need to know about your transportation needs. Will your child be taking the bus? We need to know if you need masks from us. We will supply masks if you need them, or you can supply your own. If you have a doctor's note, you may wear a face shield. And there will be students who have not only health reasons for doing that, but behavioral reasons. So there's a multitude of reasons why a child might need a face shield. It's not going to be an option though, and I think people had the understanding that kids could wear one or the other. This is safer, so this is what we want them to wear. However, we understand that some kids can't wear these for various reasons, or staff. So the face shield will be allowed, and we'll supply those as well if folks need those. And then we're asking if the children need social, emotional, behavioral, mental health supports beyond what we normally do. Do they feel that their kids are going to need that? We need to know this ahead of time so that we're ready for this. And we also need to know if the family needs a thermometer with help with daily monitoring checks, because we're going to be asking families to do a daily self-check of their children before sending them to school. And that's going to be a big piece of it. Northern Maine Medical Center will be helping in purchasing the thermometers for our families that need one. So that's wonderful as well. Any questions on, and that's it. That's all we're collecting if you're coming to school, because those are the most key important things that we need to know to get prepared. How many kids are coming? How many are not? If you're choosing remote learning, obviously you have that option. We're not requiring you to have a doctor's note to go remote learning. Some families are just going to choose remote learning. And obviously we'll have conversations with those families that maybe are choosing it and didn't have success in the spring. We'll have conversations about, okay, you didn't have success then, what's changed since then, and try to have conversations around that and give them support. But there are some families who did very well with remote learning, and so we want to support that as well. We're asking if they need their technology. We're asking them if their internet capabilities are sufficient, or they've secured a location for internet. We're asking them if they've reviewed our core values for remote learning. Remote learning is not going to look like it did this spring. It's going to be, it's reined in. We really have some clear expectations about how this looks like with regards to technology use, communication, academics, and soft skills, social and soft skills that are in alignment with our core values. This is the elementary one. The middle high school one is a little more prescriptive with not so child-friendly language, and it's important that the families understand that your 9 o'clock Zoom meeting is not optional. Attendance is being taken at that time. And you need to be, you can't be working at the grocery store. You have to be at that Zoom meeting. So things like that, we want to make sure that families understand that that is an expectation. We also have expectations of our remote staff. We've created an SOP for staff members, so they know the expectations for them as staff members, and they understand that that is non-negotiable as well.
Then what's the time frame for remote learning? Like last year, I know that you guys had like an hour and a half, 2 hours of work. As far as this remote learning plan, are they going to be in school the whole day, at home in school?
So what our plan is to, what we've looked at is a scope and sequence that we worked on with our teachers prior to the school year ending, so that the teachers made a clear outline of what are they doing in September, what are they doing in October. And we want to make sure that the in-classroom learners and the remote learners are having a similar experience. We don't want one cohort to get ahead of another or vice versa. And nothing is perfect, but we want to make sure those are manageable. So it's going to be a lot of adjustments in order to make that happen. But one thing that's not going to happen with remote learning is you need to be on Zoom at 8 a.m. and you can get off of Zoom at 3. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. Middle high school, the kids will be expected to tune into their daily class following their schedule, because we think they can handle that. They may not have to stay for the whole block, obviously, but at least the teaching part of it, they're tuning in. For elementary students, it's going to be a remote teacher with remote learners, and they're going to establish their routine based on what works for the cohort and what's best for them. And that's going to look different for youngers versus a little bit older. And then we're asking the families if they need social, emotional, or mental health supports as well. And then if they're selecting homeschooling, it's just a link to the homeschool registration portal so that the family knows how to register for homeschooling. It's an online process now with the department. So those are the things on the new website. Oh, there's also links to the blog. So Valley Unified blog or my blog are there as well. We're going to push this out tomorrow morning to mid-morning, so not to upset people too much, but we want to get that out, and then we'll also push out the registrations, the enrollment forms, so that everyone is getting that information. And we're going to send daily, if not every other day, maybe reminders to go fill out those enrollment forms. We'll do that for a few days until we maybe have 10% left, and then we'll start making phone calls and say, hey, what's going on with your kid? What are they doing? We want to make sure that we have that. How do you want to go through the guide? Do you want me to go through every section, or do you want to pick and choose based on what you had questions on? I want to leave it open for you guys so that we best use your time.
I got a question.
Sure.
Regional cases, what's our region?
Okay. So the state of Maine, as you all know, they came out with a county index, and essentially they're saying that we're going to assess your county cases on a 2-week basis. So every second Friday, I think they did it last Friday, so they're going to do it again, I believe, the 14th. They're going to come out with a county index about how things are going. When they released the county index last week, every county in Maine was a green designation, and green suggests that the county has relatively low risk and that in-person instruction can be adopted, although an SAU may opt for a hybrid instruction if its buildings or readiness make adhering to required health and safety measures for all schools are challenged. Every county in Maine got green last Friday. But the superintendents were wise to the fact of their communities, of their parents, and a lot of school districts, if not most, if not all, in Cumberland County and York County, are opting for a hybrid model right away. They're not sending their kids all to school. Whereas schools in Washington County and some in Aroostook County are looking more at an in-school presence because we have relatively no community outbreak. In working with our health advisory, one thing that we came up with that we felt was unique for our region, because 20 in Cumberland and 20 in Aroostook, or 20 in the St. John Valley is a very different thing. So we felt it very important to come up with our own regional index. And Josh, you asked, what does region mean? Region means St. John Valley. So St. John Valley is our region, and we feel that if we're hovering under 5 regional cases, we feel like our plan, which right now is to send our kids to school, it's going to be a full day, maybe a little shortened because of bus routes to start. Does that mean we're not going to adjust after week 1 if we feel like mask fatigue is taking over, or maybe we'll come to a plan for you know, for something else? We want to start because we want to maximize on no community outbreak, right? If we can maximize on that, we feel like we're ahead of the game, and we can try to recapture a lot of that learning. If we move to 6 to 19, at that case, we'll move into hybrid. And hybrid for us, we feel pre-K to grade 4 has to be in school. And we can do that by social distancing. If we have to send 3rd and 4th graders to Wisdom, you know, and put pre-K to 2 here to spread them out, we'll do that. And we know that that age level is the age level where the spread of the virus is least, how do I want to word that, Dr. Hart?
The age bracket is the least likely to spread the virus. So from ages 10 and below, they don't have as many of the receptors in their nose as the older kids and adults do. So they tend, which is weird, like it's the weird virus. Most viruses, the small children spread it the easiest, but not this one. So for the newer study out of South Korea, kids under age 10 with household contacts. So we're talking kids living in the home with their parents and sharing all the things, no masking, no distancing. They spread to adults about 5% of the time. So if you add masking, you add social distancing, they're not as dangerous as those high schoolers are. So.
Thank you. And so our grades 5 to 12 would move into remote learning at that time. And we know from what happened this spring that those are the students that can manage remote learning far better than our young ones. Full remote learning would happen when our region reaches 20 active cases. So if we have 20, that'd be pretty significant for here in Frenchville, St. Agatha. So we believe that not only should we go to remote learning, I think every parent will pull their kids back anyway. And then if we have a case in school, we can try to limit that, who we're taking out based on the cohort. When I say cohort, we're going to try to not mingle the kids as best we can, so that classrooms are not only learning together, they're going to lunch together, possibly without breaking into any other group, and then recess together. So I joked with Mr. Netto in Fort Kent today that you should be putting pennies on different cohorts, so you always know where the oranges are, where the greens are. So again, so we feel that if that cohort has a student that becomes infected, or the adult, the teacher, we pull the cohort out and wait and see if there's a school-wide spread. And again, you all know that if one kid in school gets it, it's probably going to be every parent holding their kid back. But we feel that we can contain it as long as we're keeping those cohorts relatively together as much as possible. Does that answer your question, Josh?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions that came across? One thing that is on the minds of teachers, that is, you know, some school districts have moved to a hybrid model. As I mentioned, they're sending their kids to school every Tuesday and Thursday, and not Monday, Wednesday, Friday. A lot of these schools can't get 3-foot social distancing, so they can't make it happen. And they have larger community outbreak, so that's a concern to them, and they have to move to that. That's not a problem for us. Dr. Levac and Wisdom, we can probably get the 6-foot distance at all times on any given day. So, you know, a different situation there. We have a local school district, RSU 29 Holton, that is ending their day at 1:30 each day. Again, for them, that's going to work for them because of their transportation needs. For us, we feel we can have the full day, take advantage of it, because our full day is still not going to look like it has in the past. As Peter mentioned a while ago, we're working a lot with these kids on social, emotional, and repairing their, those needs that they haven't had for so long. Kids need to be with kids. And we need to just have the opportunity to do that. So right now, we don't feel like shortening the day is advantageous. Will we find maybe that we can't keep up with cleaning the way that we can and the other things that are important? Or maybe our teachers are no longer having the time that they used to effectively plan and do those things that we owe to them? Maybe at that time, we'll come back to you and say, this is what's happening, and this is our recommendation based on that. But we won't know until we try. We don't even know how many kids are going to school versus remote learning. So we need to let something happen first, and then we'll adjust as we need.
So I have a question about the physical distancing at a younger age. So like for pre-K, kindergarten, even the playgroup, if they end up holding the playgroup, like play is such an important part of their development and their learning and their sharing. A lot of kids learn that at school if they don't have siblings and stuff. So I guess my question is, how will we maintain the 3 feet apart? And then if there is a 1 to 2 playgroup class, how is that classroom going to look like when the program is designed for children to play?
Right.
And same thing with pre-K, and I know that there's a couple of younger teachers for the younger level here, but I'm just curious how.
Some of the traditional practices, and I'll let the folks here that know more about that speak. Some of the traditional practices, so I think about rug time. Rug time, circle time is such a big part of the elementary experience. Circle time is a little different. We're going to have our own individual mats now. We're not going to have a rug in our classroom. We're going to have our individual mats, and you might be sitting, here, there, but it's no more, huddled around like little ducklings, and so we just really need to rethink. Will there be times when student A sneaks a hug with student B because they love them so much? Absolutely, it's going to happen. So then it becomes a teaching moment about, your faces need to be facing different, away from each other when you're hugging now, while we're wearing face masks. So that it's a lot of education and things. It won't be perfect. I joke with my colleagues about we're going to have to get them these pool noodle hats where they have the distancing so they can never go in. It can't be like that. All we can do is the best that we can and keep reminding the students how to stay safe as best we can. This is the best protection. That's going to be the thing that we are focused on even more than the social distancing. Obviously, when they're eating, that's going to be a little more sensitive where they need the 6-foot distance. That's because their face masks are off. So that's going to be a time where we're really monitoring and really educating, but it's going to happen. They're gonna want to play. They just will. And then we're talking about hand washing, and we're talking about all of those important things. And that's the best we can do.
The American Academy of Pediatrics has come right out and said that we still need to be concerned about how they play, but if you don't allow for play, the harms that we can cause at that stage of development outweighs the risks associated with them spreading the virus. And we don't want to downplay any sort of risk, but we're very confident that given that kind of guidance, and I think Dr. Carson also speaks to this point as well, we know that play is going to be critical. And there may be some points that play requires less than 3 feet of contact, that you have a mask and a shield, and those are the things that we're going to have to work on, but that we're willing to entertain. Balancing that social emotional development need with keeping everyone safe. And it's going to be a process, and we'll often be consulting, I think, with Dr. Hart about new findings, and but we'll find our way, and we will make time for those younger children, especially to play, because that is critical to their development.
Absolutely.
It's truly a blessing, the size of your schools in this case, because you can really take advantage of the space you have, and there's not overcrowding, and so that is definitely a blessing. I don't know, Kevin, have you had conversations about 1 to 3 playgroup?
Our conversations are as long as there is adequate distancing. There are some areas that we're going to designate as single play with your older student. The learning process. Will there be some joined play group? Yes, but we might try not to be so close in proximity. Like they said, it's going to be a learning progress.
Thank you. And Tracy or Cheryl, did you guys must have had conversations about pre-K and.
One of my questions was, do I really want to put all these toys away? And I think, Cheryl and I talked about hand washing, sanitizing, and all of that. So I don't think I'm going to put toys away. I plan on maybe even having individual bins for them at night time. But I mean, free-form time, it's just not possible for them not to touch it.
And when this first,
And I'm not going to necessarily release that. We'll talk about like that set. Maybe not sure.
when the virus was new, everyone was very concerned about, the packages in the mail and anything that touched anything, okay?
Everything got licensed.
Yeah, everything. I had people coming in my office with their hands like red and bleeding because they were cleaning obsessively. So, but we found out it's much more about the masking and the speed. Like if you're in close contact with somebody without your mask on, you're talking, that is much worse than sharing toys. So, especially because the virus really degrades on surfaces much more quickly than we thought. So frequent cleaning, frequent hand washing, and I agree with American County Pediatrics, those kids need to play.
Yeah. No, and I'm sorry that I keep talking about. So my 3-year-old had an eye doctor appointment, and he kept his mask on for all of 2 minutes. And the whole time he was like this, and just playing with it, and then touching the floor, and then doing this. I'm like, no, like this is awful. Take that mask off so you stop touching your face. Was basically. So my thought, like I'm just thinking 3-year-olds in 1, 2, 3 play group, like with masks, they're just constantly doing this, and if they're the ones that are least likely to spread the virus because of, like you said, their nasal passages and that. I guess I'm just, like, why force it for that age level?
In the 2 to 4 year olds, it's a recommendation, so it's gonna be a lot of, them off, while they're apart, and then when it's time for play, okay, time to put your mask on, we're playing. So it's gonna be an education process of how we do that. But there's no one thinks a 3-year-old's gonna be able to wear those things for long periods of time. That's why your pre-K teachers need a raise.
So kids coming in my office, the little ones actually usually do better than the older ones.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, and they're so cute, like just toddling, like they just walk down the hall with a little mask on. And it depends on the personality. Some kids are going to be stubborn about it, but the smaller ones adapt better than the older ones. So far from what I've seen people wear in office, and much better than the adults.
And peer pressure comes into that as well. If my friend's wearing it, I'm gonna wear it. So a lot of that's gonna come into play in how that looks.
I talked to one parent whose daughter has 5 different masks that she brings with her to match her outfit. And I had somebody else I talked to, her 6-year-old, like wore his mask all day for fun. So some of it's getting used to it. So my boys are older and they now have to wear a mask if they're gonna use the screen.
One question.
Yep.
This is awesome.
You can ask as many as you want.
It's not gonna be my last.
So, this is pertaining to transportation with the buses. And I read here, students will be required, regardless of age, they're gonna have assigned seats. So, my question is, besides the bus driver, there could be somebody else in that bus.
So the way that we're defining assigned seats is back to the front. So first kid on, last seat.
So, my question about that is, I've got a son that's very big, and I'm not gonna expect him to sit between 2 high schoolers, or, be a high schooler, then a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, and another high schooler. Is there gonna be supervision on that bus? Because we all know how kids, and I can't see young kids in the back of a bus with maybe 3 high schoolers. And then if the bus driver is driving around doing his thing, he can't be keeping an eye on that. And they could be picking on these little kids. They're already going through enough as it is. So how are we gonna solve that?
So a lot of it is working with our students and working on, even on the bus, everything's gonna be about routine and everything is new and different. So what we are used to seeing in our minds with busing is very different than what's gonna be happening, because you're gonna have a maximum of 24 to 26 kids on the bus. They're not gonna be sitting shoulder to shoulder, it's one per seat. And will there be times where your son's recommended seat is not back there because he can't? Well, obviously, we have to accommodate that as well. What we are not going to do, unless there's an IEP determination that says it must happen, we don't want an extra adult on that bus if we don't have to have one. And that's just because adults will be impacted by this virus far worse, and they'll spread it far worse. So the less adults we have on the bus, the better it will be. That being said, I don't know what it's going to look like. So I might come back to you after 2 days of school and say, whoops, we need a bus monitor now because, of how that looks. I don't know, and that's just my honest feedback about that.
You might want to look at that. I think we're open to that. What we do want to avoid is taking existing school staff to do that, because then any student, if someone on that bus, student or staff, ends up contracting the virus, then that staff member, any student they've been in contact with, has to go into a period of Right, isolation. what's the difference if the child is in the back or the front, they're walking through anyway, so whoever's on that bus has a chance of getting this virus, so it doesn't matter if the younger kids are in the front or the back.
And if they're wearing a face mask.
Right, so I think it's, the younger kids should be in the front, so they're supervised more and away from it.
The recommendation is you don't want, so first student on the bus is the last student off. If last student is contaminated, he hasn't contaminated all the other by walking through and they're all sitting, because he went through when nobody else was there. Now, is it a perfect picture? No. But you understand, as that bus fills from the back to the front, they're never crossing each other. They're only sitting at the last point of the first student.
Well, that's cool.
I understand that as well. That's why the cohorts are so important. But their bus is a cohort as well. But we want to try to contain. It's not perfect, but it's based on the guidance that we have and what's being recommended. Now, transportation, I will tell you, is the hot topic right now. In fact, it was item number 1 on our superintendent's meeting this afternoon. And right now, there is no solid governance on how to proceed with that. So they're basically going on the last recommendation, which was put out by the National Transportation, yada, 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 in combination with whatever. And then they're going back to just the distancing, right? So 3-foot distancing means we can't put 2 per seat. So we're waiting for a little bit further guidance on that. And that's the best we can do right now. It's a good reason to drive your children to school.
Are there any more questions?
I do. Are we going through it, or can I just ask?
You can ask whatever, yeah.
Okay, so in the remote learning plan, where it says, when and where developmentally appropriate, learners will have a packet of relief work for school. So it says early elementary. What is early elementary, like up to what grade level?
Pre-K2.
Pre-K2. And even if there's older students that in the elementary, everybody learns differently. And remote learning is not for everybody, whether you're 16 or 4.
Right.
Is that paper packet going to be an option
yeah.
for those learners as well?
Yeah, like Dr. said earlier, we didn't know in this early on what the spread was at that time on materials and
Right.
how long it lives on paper and cardboard. And my wife had the whole chart on the fridge. So we know more now, and we know that we can do this safely, and the kids need manipulatives. So we'll be sending manipulatives home. We'll be sending when they need it. It can't be all behind a screen. It
Right.
absolutely can't be.
So, and then also it says identified by the school staff at all levels. So basically, I know that the previous teachers have reported back on how their students have done remotely, but those teachers know how they've done, in a sense, so I just have to personally, my son did great content-wise, he understood all the context, but the actual learning and getting him to do everything in front of the screen was torture. So like, he did great from the eyes of his teacher learning the material, but the remote learning part of it, as far as computer screen, like, are parents gonna be able to put their input on here too? Like, yeah, my kid can't do the computer screen deal, whether a teacher recognizes that or not.
And I think what a family has to realize though, when they are selecting remote learning over in-classroom learning, and there's a lot of factors involved with that, is that the teacher has minimal control over the success impact of that, because the child is in another town or down the road. So it really has to be a partnership between that teacher, that family and parents and that teacher about what works for that child. And again, we don't know how many kids are going to be remote learners. So if a remote teacher has 8 remote learners, well, that looks very differently than if I have 20 remote learners. So what we'll be careful about is in determining who's a remote teacher or who has to be a remote teacher. That may look very different from another one just because of the nature of the cohort of kids that they're working with and the age level. But what we don't want to do is take our blueprint from what we did this spring and say, you're not getting packets, you're going to do the tech. We can't do that as well. It's got to be better.
I was just told, as long as these kids get an option for a paper packet,
They have to.
is my, was my biggest thing with the whole remote learning.
Absolutely.
And there is going to be opportunities for parents to communicate with teachers. Each teacher teaching remotely is going to be posting office hours and advising about specific procedures that are best for getting them in touch with me, so that, hey, this isn't working, this week, that, we're starting to struggle, and then that's going to open the door to dialogue. So, okay, well, let's see what we can do to problem solve that. The teacher will then contact the parent back, say, get more information, really identify the scope of the issue, and then try some different alternatives.
I have a question about the remote learning. No, it's not specifically about the remote learning. I had someone approach me and their family is choosing to go with remote learning and they're on the free lunch program. And they wondered if they were still eligible to receive the free lunch.
So remote learners will have access to the school lunch program. However, there will not be deliveries to their door. So somebody will have to pick up a lunch or arrange for the lunches to be picked up from one of the 2 schools. That's the way that it's going to work in this. Because we are offering in-school education, we do not have to deliver lunches anymore, but those students still have access to the lunch, so they can pick up their lunches.
Okay.
So I got one more question.
Yes.
And it's regarding to the busing again. So yes, it works for the assigned seats, but when you're dropping off the kids after work, after school, the kid in the back who has the house first is gonna walk through the bus anyway.
No, he's going to be the last drop-off. It's going to be reverse drop-offs.
So you're gonna sit according to where your house is located?
Yeah.
That's a lot of planning.
That's a lot, yeah.
It is.
How
And they've been over it 3 times. The guidance keeps paging.
Right, oh my goodness.
So it's been pretty incredible.
So when they get on the bus in the morning, and then when they get off the bus, it's all gonna be accounted for. You're off first, so you're gonna sit in front.
And get this, it's going to change every day, right? Because some days a kid's not going to ride the bus because dad's driving them. So yeah,
Or our daycare one day.
I rest my case.
that's why your bus drivers need a raise.
Okay.
I have 2 more things, I'm sorry.
We got some people in it.
Okay, so where it says, so at the tech center and the tech center on page 22, and I have the August 3 version, but it says all students will help clean and sanitize hand tools, equipment before and after use. All students will help clean and sanitize the room and high surface areas. Okay, my question, it's not a question, I guess my statement is, chemical cleaning is really dangerous for people, for children. Are these students going to be required to wear gloves when touching these disinfected wipes and those kinds of things.
Kevin?
And then my other issue is there's a lot of residue left at the surface from all these chemicals that we're disinfecting with, and I understand that we have to follow CDC guidelines. That's very important, and I don't disagree with it. But I guess my thought is, and I know it's a lot of work for teachers, but is it possible for them to wash their surfaces after they disinfected with soap and water or just a cloth to get that residue off of the surface before these little, now I'm back to elementary, little kids start touching all these surfaces?
So it's a two-part question. I'm gonna let
It is.
Kim answer the tech center one.
As far as the tech center, yes, we will have gloves available if they so choose to use them. The chemical that we're utilizing is Fight Back. And Fight Back, if you look at the SDS sheet, it's a 0 for every element, skin contact, respiratory, etc. The reason that the students are cleaning, we have them clean and have had them clean
Yep,
all times, because that's their habit of work.
absolutely, yep.
And it's part of being employed, you're cleaning your workstation, etc. So this is just an added level of cleaning. This, with COVID, now we're cleaning independent tools. So we're having Johnny use a Phillips screwdriver, a flat screwdriver, a hammer, etc. They have to disinfect all of that. So they will be responsible for cleaning their tools in their toolbox. As far as cleaning the surfaces, we are disinfecting that area. There is residue. We're giving the option to the teacher to wipe that down. It's not required that they do it, but yet it's an option. Most teachers have already said they will be more than willing to clean the environment that their students are in, so that way it's safe there. So they are willing to do it.
And we'll supply them with not only the Lysol wipes and the SDS sheet, but also a bucket of water, whatever they want, they'll get as part of their, their routine.
Okay.
But they don't have to clean.
They don't, yeah.
They don't have to. And if they don't, then we'll make sure we prioritize those classrooms but your teachers, they're all going to pitch in.
And then my last. Okay, so in the last statement where it says students have traveled outside of state. Okay, so they've traveled out of state and they have to quarantine for 14 days. So is that required for family members who have traveled? Let's say mom or dad goes on vacation. When they come back, do the kids have to stay home as well for those 14 days? Because the parents should be quarantining if they're out of state. So I guess, sorry.
So you're asking if the parents have gone out of state, but the children have not?
Right.
So you're wondering?
So the student has not traveled out of state, but the family member has.
Right. And then that student is in touch with that family member.
Yeah.
So that's an excellent question, and that's why we have that.
Great. Actually, it's a really good question. So, it's not required right now. And there is a risk there. It's not a big one. Most of the time when someone comes back from out of state, number one, they have the option to go to the swab and send clinic and get tested. So we can recommend that. There's nothing that I know of anywhere that requires it. That would be the safest thing to do. If they don't do that, which would be silly to want to quarantine instead of just doing that, but if they don't do that, then yes, there's a little bit of a risk. Most of the time, more often than in kids, an adult would have symptoms. And then after they develop symptoms, there is usually a delay before the next person develops an illness. And so if someone were to be home sick and test positive, then the student would have to quarantine at home. So can someone fall through the cracks that way? Yep. So it's all about risk mitigation. None of this is without any risk, none of it. The best analogy I have that I use with people is that school is really important. It's important for kids to be able to come in and have that social emotional learning and have that play. There is a risk to it. There's also a risk when you get in your car every time. Every time you get in your car, everybody in the car could die, and so could other people in other cars. And you still drive, but you wear your seatbelt, You buy a car with airbags, you get your brakes checked every year, and you don't drive 100 miles per hour. Even if you do everything right, somebody else could still be a bad driver and hit you. So there is no way to have zero risk when you drive your car. Same with this. But it's low risk.
Yeah, if we have families that are honest, I think we're ahead of the game. You know, we travel to here, I'm more worried about, you know, dad's going to Miami this weekend for business and, I mean, we're hoping that people are honest, and because we can always say, you know what, for X amount of time, why don't you try remote learning while we figure out, you know, what the kind of situation is, we can work with folks that way.
Okay.
Lena has one more question.
I just want to say that you guys did a great job on this guide,
Yes,
and all the teachers and staff, and you guys did a great job.
There's a lot of input, and we're pleased that you like it.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll need a motion to approve the Valley Unified Reintegration Plan for MSAD33.
I made a motion to implement the integration plan.
Okay, any more questions? If not, we'll take a vote. In favor? Jean in favor? Everybody's in favor.
Thank you, Dr. Hart.
Next on the agenda is the 2021 school calendar.
So we have some tweaks, and I know you don't have a color copy, so I put a color copy up on the screen for you. A couple of little tweaks to the calendar that we like to propose since last time we were together. The first one, we are adding a workshop day on the Monday before school starts, so that instead of 2 workshop days, the teachers have 3. We're doing that for the high school on August 17, and then for the elementary school on August 31st, Monday. And the reason we're doing that is we feel that the preparation for social emotional learning is going to be so important. And it's not something that we prepared for in June when we ended school, because we were focused on all of those remote learning preparations. We really feel that that extra day is going to be key. What we did is we took the January 4 workshop, the last calendar that you had a workshop on January 4. We turned that into a student day. So now we moved that workshop to the Monday for the beginning of the school year. And because we added a student day on January 4, we backed up the last day of school from the 17th of June to the 16th of June. So those are essentially the major changes. The only other major change we are proposing in our plan and on this calendar is a delayed pre-K start. We would like to start pre-K on the 21st of September when the big kids go to harvest break, so that we have less kids on the bus. We have time for 2 weeks for our elementary classrooms to work on really a strong foundation for SOPs. So having Ms. Tracy work with our students from last year, so there's some closure there, and having all of your elementary teachers work with their students from last year for the first week or so, depending on how things go, so that we have some closure, we have some trust building, and then last year's teacher can slowly transition you to this year's teacher in that plan. Peter, did you want to mention something?
Yeah, this last year's teacher is in the best position, we believe, because of the relationship they already have in place to do the standard operating procedures instruction, to develop a foundation for ongoing social and emotional learning. And also they're in the best position to identify where this child was when we left school in March. Where was this child when we ended the school year after our extended period of remote learning? Where is this child today? And based on what I know of this child, what can I do to start them along the path for learning recovery? And then what information can I gather to pass on to the other teacher? And at Dr. Levac Elementary School, they're going to do it in a real interesting way. The students are going to report to a new classroom, but with their teacher from last year. And then they're going to be doing some teaming, and that will be pretty extensive at between your grade 5 and 6 teacher, because your your rising seventh graders are now going to be in a completely different school. But this is a real strong team, and they work well together already. So this is going to be a real rich experience for the students at Belfield Elementary School.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the updated 2020-21 school calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021 school calendar.
Is there a second? Second by Joanna. Any more questions? If not, we'll vote in favor. Who's in favor? One's in favor. Okay. We'll move on to the Name Principals Association All Sports Guidance Update.
You have a packet in front of you. It's quite a big packet. You want to just skip ahead. I think it's page 8, although the pages aren't numbered. But you'll see a page, around page 8, it says phase 3 at the top of the page. The last time you approved this guidance, it was up to phase 2. And I told you, once they come out with phase 3, we'll talk again. Phase 2 ended on August 2nd. Phase 3 started on August 3rd. It's an extension. So phase 3 is phase 2. It's just a 3 instead of a 2. And it has new dates. It has August 3 to August 16. And this would allow any of your coaches to continue to work with their athletes. Even if it was your varsity basketball coach who wanted to do conditioning with their kids, or your varsity softball coach, it's an extension of the summer program. Currently, you do not have any, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Peltier, I don't believe you have any of your winter or spring sports going on. It's just the fall kids the kids that play soccer, because essentially, usually it's the same kids, right? So your fall kids are working with their coach. They're not playing soccer specific games or anything like that. They're doing conditioning, they're doing exercise according to these phases. We had a meeting a couple days ago as the principals and athletic directors, and we all agreed that we would like to follow this as a script, because we feel that if we stray from this, it puts us in a position where we're making determinations without guidance. And I don't feel comfortable with that. So there is a memo that's gone out that says, Aroostook County Schools, you can back up these dates 2 weeks, and you can start 2 weeks earlier than the rest of the state. I don't feel comfortable with that, because I don't want Aroostook County to be a guinea pig for what might happen. We want the NPA to go beyond phase 4. Phase 4, by the way, starts August 24 and extends to September 7. We want to make sure the NPA puts out guidance beyond phase 4 for when the season starts. They're saying that preseason should start on September 8th, yet they haven't given us guidance on how to do that yet. What do games look like? Who do you play against? How do you travel on the bus if it's 1 per seat? What does the crowd control look like? Are you supposed to not let crowds there? Are you big games between 2 rival schools? How are we supposed to control that? I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. So for now, I'm asking you to approve phase 3-4, which is just extended conditioning. We're getting the kids in shape. They're exercising. They're staying in their pods. We're monitoring them. I think it's the best way to proceed. And if they come out with game situation advisement, we'll come back to you for approval on that.
Are there any questions for Ben? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve phase 3 and phase 4 guidance from the NPA for both varsity and middle school sports.
Make a motion to approve the phase 3 and phase 4 guidance for the MPA for both varsity and middle school sports.
June and July 2nd. Okay. Are there any questions? If not, we'll vote in favor. All in favor?
Under new business. We do not have any retirements. We do have a resignation, and I did send an email to all of you back on July 22. Laura Albert has resigned her position. I did also forward you the notes that Mr. Fantasia took regarding that. I think Mr. Fantasia went above and beyond to try to make things work. So I commended him for that. We definitely did not want to see Miss Albert leave, but I think, you know, Miss Laura is starting a new family, and there's a lot of different, you know, things there, and things happen. So sometimes we just have to go our separate ways. So I'll entertain a motion to accept Laura's resignation.
Second? Second by Lena? Any questions? If not, we'll, take a vote. In favor? All in favor?
We have no transfers.
New hires.
As luck would have it, and I'm telling you folks, to find a high school science teacher, it's not an easy, it's probably one of the hardest positions to fill. And to find one that actually attended the high school that he's applied for is even more amazing. So I got an email, I think the day after we put out the ad, and with some interest in this position. And I believe that there was actually two candidates that were interviewed, but you'll see from your letter from Mr. Fantasia, they are recommending Mr. Travis Michaud, who is a 1996 graduate of Wisdom. Travis and I did work in the summer at Fraser Paper a couple times, so I know Travis, and I think it'll be a very good fit.
Okay, so we'll need a motion to approve Travis Mitchell as a new science teacher for Wisdom Middle High School.
I'll make a motion to approve Travis for the, science teacher.
Is there a second? Second by Raj. Any questions? Okay, we'll take a vote in favor. All in favor.
I believe Mr. Michaud is also social studies certified as well, so that gives them extra flexibility in the future if we need it.
Okay, we'll go on to current openings.
We do still have an educational technician opening here at the Tech Center, and I believe we also have one at Dr. Labatt Elementary as well. I didn't list it here, so if you know anyone who's looking for a great job, for a great district, let them know that we do have those ed tech openings.
Which one, I'm sorry, my memory fails me, but the ed tech position at Dr. Left, which teacher left? Which ed tech one?
I believe the vacancy is in pre-K. Or it's a Title I. Half-time Title I. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, and then we have cook that design.
Oh, yes, we do.
And,
We do have it. Did I not list it on the notes?
we have the.
You have the letter.
The letter.
Okay, yeah, that came in, yeah. We do have a resignation from Ann John as well that will need to approve.
Okay, so I'll need a motion to approve Ann John resignation. Gerard? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lena. Any questions? Okay, now we'll vote in favor. All in favor. Okay, next is the coaching recommendations, which we have in our package.
Your new recommendations are for boys varsity soccer, Dominic Rossnail, who is an instructor here at the Center for Alternative Learning. Then Sean Willett for middle school boys soccer, and Tammy Lerman for middle school girls soccer.
Okay, so I'll need a motion to approve the recommendations for coaching positions as presented.
I also approve the recommendation for coaching positions as presented.
Gerard, is there a second? Second by Raj. Any questions? If not, we'll vote in favor. All in favor. Okay, next is the technology take-home agreement update.
The technology coordinators, Anne Marie Vince, and also working with Giselle as well, have looked at our take-home agreements for technology. In the past, the district here has used a company for the purposes of computer insurance. And Madawaska and 27 use a different process where they do a self-insurance. Essentially, the way the self-insurance works is students who are taking a laptop home, typically that's your 7th through 12th grade students, they would pay a fee to the self-insurance, and that's basically their promise to take care of the device and yada, yada, yada. And that pool of money helps with any damages to the machines that come up throughout the year. What we're proposing in this agreement here is to help families that have more than one child. If you have 4 children and it's $40 per children, that becomes very expensive annually. So this has an actual tiered self-insure method where it's $40 for the first child, and then $60 if you have 2, $80 for 3, and then $100 for a family of 4 or more, so that we can help out that way. And then it has a deductible scale. So again, if you have a MacBook computer, it's worth $1,100, and you drop a Gatorade on it, that device is done. It's kaput. So you've paid the $40 into the self-insurance fund. What we're going to charge you for that first deductible to get that repaired is $100. So $1,100 device, you're paying $100. We feel that that's more than fair. Your second negligent offense, again, between the time you're a 7 through 12 student, your second offense would be $150, and your third incident, which is where my daughter is up to as a junior, would be $200. So it does increase because we do have some students that are frequent flyers. Luckily, it's not a whole lot of students, but we feel that is a good method to it. There was a statement there that said if the damage is caused by wear and tear and is not the student's fault, they would pay the regular price of $100. That becomes very subjective. So, Anne Marie was very honest when we presented this to MSAD33. Those type of things, we wouldn't charge them. If a key pops off, we know that that's not negligent. Now, if there's a knife stuck in the key, and that's a different story. So we'll work with families and make sure that we're doing that. But we want to make sure that we're not going in the hole with the program, and we want to make sure that families don't have to pay $1,100 every time there's an accident that happens. So we'd be asking you to approve this, which would be in line with what the other 2 districts will be doing as well, unless you want to make changes.
I have a question then.
Yep.
What happens if the family cannot afford this insurance, let's say? Probably not.
We work with families.
I think
We'll work with the families.
we work with the family.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they just need to contact me or the building principal. We will definitely work with the families. It's also, if it's a hardship and they're free and reduced, again, we'll work with the families. And if there's a chance that Dr. back 6th graders or even 5th graders decide to take it home, this would also cover them as well. So per family.
They're not required for like hardware failures.
Is that required for hardware failure?
So, as you know, that's my job is IT. The older the computer is, the easier it is to break. So, after a while of opening and closing the screen, it's gonna fall off and you just get loose. And
Josh, these are Macs.
I do it.
Does it happen?
We could drop Gatorade on the notebooks and they're still running. You're willing to work with the families, like sometimes these things just fall apart. And it might look like they got thrown, but they're not thrown. I mean, I work with doctors every day, and some of these laptops are rough shape and they're.
Yeah, I think the majority, and Anne Marie talked about this yesterday, the majority of the offenses that happen are either spill or a cracked case or a cracked screen. Am I right?
You are.
Yeah.
You are.
But you have a nice one.
Yeah.
No, I'm willing to work, so it's different, I'm willing to work with the students, right? It's not my position, I can't speak for Vince, but it's not my position to discipline the student. If we feel that there's a suspicious activity going on, or they've done something, we'll bring it to the building principal and discuss it, but we'll work with the student. And yes, we're aware that, of course, the newer the device, and as it depreciates in value, and it gets used and worn, we take that into consideration. But if we're going to be part of the Milty program, those devices are renewed about every 4 years anyhow. So what's nice about this program is that it gives the technology department funds to be able to use to purchase the differences between what the student pays for the deductible and what the actual cost is for the repair, as well as if your dog eats the cable, or chews your cat, or you close your seat on the recliner and it cuts into your cable, there is a fee for that. That's not covered under warranty, right? So it will help us. Do we make money off of this? No, that's not our intent. That's not our intent at all. But it's to help, and if you look at, I'll give you an example. We had the average cost to repair in LCD is $245 and change. The student paid $40 for the insurance. $100 is your deductible if it's the first offense. Okay, that's $150 of that that's coming out of the technology budget. So that's for the insurance is going to help out. And again, we do work with the families. Vince and I will be seeing all of the repairs and all of the quotes that come through. And it will be our determination, along with building principal, whether that student pays it or not.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay.
I have a question.
Sorry?
With the remote learning, if a family is going to do remote learning and they have to have the computer at home and they're not able to pay that insurance, I believe at the end, when we started doing remote learning with everybody, we just sent computers home. I know not all the students paid that. How's that going to work?
So, my opinion is if we go into remote learning and the student takes a device home because they need the device, I feel they still should pay the $40 because that's going to help offset. To answer your question, can they afford it? If they can't afford it, again, we're going to work with the family. The device will go home. We're not going to prevent technology from the student doing their work.
Will families be aware of that? Like, obviously, I wouldn't want to advertise it, but if you see a no, like, do teachers kind of, knowing that the child probably needs the laptop at home, if they see a no, do they go further with that? Like, is it for financial? I know you can't probably ask this question, but.
We also have other devices that are not as expensive as a MacBook that we may be able to give or issue to that student. Again, my opinion is that, and I tell my staff this, I do not want to hear that technology is going to prevent the student from learning. I don't want that excuse. And I'll do everything in my power to allow them, to provide them that technology to be able to do their work, whether it's in school or whether it's at home remote, or both.
When we see that no, we typically, the fact is this a family that, is a free or reduced lunch family? And then we'll have those conversations. A lot of times though, a parent indicating no is because they don't approve of the excessive use of technology, or they know their child will abuse the technology at home. So they would rather them use their own personal device at home, or the family device.
And we'll work with them, even if they don't have a device at home, I'm willing to work with the parent for learn and teach them how to use parent controls on device. I've suggested to parents that if you have a student at home and they're saying they're going to bed, and all of a sudden they're at midnight chatting with somebody, unplug the Wi-Fi. You don't need the Wi-Fi between 10 and 6 o'clock in the morning, So there's practices and there's communication, there's training, there's teaching and learning.
Okay, are we ready to take a vote to approve the technology program participation agreement?
Motion?
Second by Val. Any more questions? If not, we'll vote in favor. All in favor. Next on the agenda is the school lunch prices for next year, 2021. Then,
You have a school lunch price sheet. You see our prices last year, and then we run into price equity tool every year before the year starts. That price equity tool did indicate that our student breakfast at Dr. Levac was not sufficient. We weren't charging enough. So it actually matches, it's indicating that it should match the high school price at $1.25. But in an amazing twist of events, your lunch prices indicate that we were charging too high last year, or we would be charging too high this year if we wouldn't adjust. So those would go back 10 cents to $2.50 and $2.70 respectively.
okay. So we'll need a motion to approve the school lunch price adjustment for next year.
So
Your Honor, is there a second? So, are there any questions? If not, we'll take a vote in favor. All in favor. Okay. Next on the agenda is the district holding substitute.
We have the employee assistance program, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. One thing that we would like to offer our employees, and I showed you the student survey a while ago. There's also a staff survey that's going to go out tomorrow, finding out what our staff needs are, if they're going to get a note to do remote learning, or if they're going to come in the classroom for learning. But we do ask them if they have their own social, emotional, or mental health needs that need to be addressed. And the way that we felt would be the best way to take care of our employees would be to offer them an employee assistance program. Many businesses have this. The hospital in Northern Maine Medical has this. Essentially, you have access to the services of that entity, and after your insurance pays for your visit, the district would pay out-of-pocket costs to support you in using those services. So the deductible and the co-pays would be paid by the district. We could use our coronavirus funds to pay for those things so that it's not coming out of something that we didn't budget for. We feel it's an exact perfect use of those COVID-19 funds, because we're going to have a lot of teachers who are going to have a lot on their plates. And Tammy Lothrop, the district guidance counselor social worker, she's going to have her hands full with the kids, and she's not going to have the time, even though she'll want to work with staff. The staff needs someone to go to if they need that service. So Peter did connect with Dr. Hart, and then with some other folks that he's been networking with the Health and Wellness Committee and our guidance counselors and social workers, and has made a connection at Northern Maine Medical where they'd be willing to offer us this service, this employee assistance program. We don't have the formal draft write-up of what that is. Peter, did you want to just elaborate on?
Yeah, it's not, I can tell you, it's not going to be necessarily a contract, but rather it will be a service proposal. As they do with the hospital, if a staff member there accesses the behavioral health services through Northern Maine Medical Center for a set number of visits, the hospital will pay the portion of the visit not covered by insurance, and that's what we're looking at. And so we're just going to draft language that would indicate that how our employees will access an on-ramp to those services. And for employees in particular, because they're adults more susceptible to contracting the virus, we think going with Northern Maine Medical Center for employee assistance is a win-win, because if someone becomes physically ill because of the virus and then experiences the mental and emotional fallout from that, then we're in an excellent position to provide wraparound services featuring ease of conferencing amongst medical professionals.
So that's why we're going there. We're also examining services for students, like school-based in each of our schools through a couple of other vendors. And we'll come back to you with that information. That will more than likely be a contracted service for a set team.
Okay, so I guess we'll need a motion to approve the employee assistance program.
I have a motion to approve the employee assistance program.
Is there a second? Laura, are there any more questions? Okay, if not, we'll vote in favor. Okay, all in favor. Now we'll go to the district voting.
I misnamed this when we originally put the agenda together. We've since changed our thinking about what this should be called. Essentially, I guess a district floating sub works, but it's not necessarily what we're looking for specifically. So we've kind of changed the idea here where it's a temporary, help me out here, folks. Temporary support personnel. What we'd like to do is, again, using our CRF funds, we would like to look at our pool of substitute teachers and offer a temporary position in our schools, one for Wisdom, one for here at the Tech Center, one for Dr. Levat, where your administrators have a support person to be able to plug in and help whenever needed. So teacher, first grade teacher hasn't had, their duty-free lunch yet because, go fill in for them for the next 20 minutes, and we have the flexibility of somebody who can, we need this child to be transported to, to the other school, that maybe that person will be able to do that as well. Or we have a teacher that just went sick and we need a sub right now, so you can go fill in that classroom. We feel like having somebody in the building that's available every day and filling in those times where right now we don't know how things are going to flow with, the various lunch breaks that we have and the recess breaks and all of those different transitions. And we're going to need to give our teachers breaks, and we're going to need to make sure that we have, we're taking care of each other. So we feel that this is a perfect use of CRF funds. We would right now target that person to have employment for the remainder of this calendar year. So when we advertise it, it would be from the start of the school year to the end of December 31st. And then by that time, we'll know the value of having that. And if we need to extend that, we'll come back to you and say, okay, we think this is going to be a valuable thing to continue for the rest of the school year. And we'll have more data on that as well. Really think it's a good idea, and we hope that that's something you'll consider.
Is that all day, like 7.5 hours?
They would come in the entire day. We would pay them on the substitute scale. So they would be paid, the $90, $95, or $100 a day based on that. That's why I'm saying our subs would be perfect, because they're always wanting to come as well, but we would guarantee them daily employment. We would not offer them medical benefits. However, we would give them one personal day, because it's essentially half a year, and a few sick days as well, just in case they become ill and they need to take time off. So those would be the benefits we give for them.
Okay. So we'll need a motion to approve hiring temporary support personnel for the remainder of the school year for each school, one for each school.
I make a motion to hire a district floating sub for the year using COVID funds.
And are we doing one per building? Is that your motion, Jean, for one per building?
One for high school, one for elementary.
How about for the tech center? Should we have one for them too?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, because that way we're keeping the same person in a building, where if we were just hiring subs randomly, it's going to be new people coming in.
Is this for half the year or the whole year?
We said till December 31st because our CRF funds end then, but then we'd be able to use our CARES funds if we feel the benefit is there. So for now, till
So
December 31st.
December 31st.
So we have a motion, is there a second? So, any more questions? If not, we'll vote in favor. All in favor. Next, we go to the Dr. Last Elementary School pre-K program. It's been
So pre-K, the laws around pre-K programming mandates that we have one adult for every 8 children. So in a program like yours where you have a teacher and an ed tech, that's 2 adults, 16 children. Last year, our 16 children became 17, became 18, became 19, and I believe it became 20. We put an additional ed tech in the room to make sure that that worked out, and we had the appropriate ratios. Now, with social distancing and the 3-foot and 4-year-olds, and now 3 adults in a room where we probably shouldn't have that many adults in a room, Cheryl's been watching her numbers for enrollment. Cheryl, what do you watching right now?
There are 60 formally enrolled, but I've had calls from 5 others who say that they are planning to enroll preschool students.
So I truly believe we're probably going to be in the same predicament. If even one of these students enrolls, right, then we're over the 60, and I can probably get a waiver for that. But 2, 3 more, it's just not going to be something that we can get a waiver for. So in speaking with Cheryl, and I think we're in agreement. We really feel that this would be an opportunity to make your pre-K program 2 sessions. If your current teacher is able to do that, that would be ideal, so that we wouldn't have to have split teachers. But we think that having that program split so that we can have those ratios appropriate and have the social distancing measures in place. And, kids come half the day and get bus home, another kid cohort comes in for this second half of the day. We believe also that this may be something we can use the CRF funds for as well, because this is a direct impact to social distancing measures that we can't help. So we feel that this is definitely something that we could put in that application as well. In addition to that, we feel that there should be some discussion, and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, but I think it's also an opportunity to look at your pre-K program and consider whether or not your 4-day program maybe moves into a 5-day program. It's very different in Madawaska than 27. I know I can speak to 27. 27 does 4 days for all the students. And then on the 5th day, they bring in some of the most needy students for more intervention on that 5th day. That would be something that, that Cheryl and Tracy would have to talk about and figure that out. But without a doubt, I think the split day program, bringing in that second cohort, is definitely an advantage. Cheryl, did you want to elaborate on that?
No, the social distancing and the needs of preschool, having that large number and one extra adult, it truly is very detrimental to all the students if we don't bring that cohort up.
And that's
Tracy is willing to work both shifts to be here all day. I think that's probably a big one.
awesome.
Is this something we're looking at like temporarily due to this year and the social distancing and the fact that we have the funds, or is this something we're looking to place permanently? And of course, we don't know the number of students who will enroll next year, and is
It's
it
hard.
a year-to-year basis, or?
I'd like to say a year-to-year basis, but when you have 2 to 3 years of the same data, right? So this past year, we'll keep an eye on it next year, and we'll try to gauge what those incoming pre-Kers will be. But I think this year more than ever, there should be more parents holding their kids back from pre-K than ever, just because of what's going on. So if you're already getting 16 to 20, and some are probably holding back, that might add to next year's, and that might, but we'll have to look at it as a year-to-year.
So those 16 that are enrolled, we're not for sure yet on if they're homeschooled, like if they decided to homeschool their
haven't given the
We haven't
survey
done
yet. We haven't given the survey. So your motion can be to add the second half-day cohort, if the numbers go above 16, or something like that.
But 16 is also a tough number, isn't it, in your room to social distance?
It depends. This class group that I had in May, I had a lot of 3-year-olds. There's a big difference between a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so it was very difficult. I had my first group was 16, and I had issues because they were all 4.
Okay.
It depends.
Um,
And I'm flexible too, like next year, if that says, you only have 10, you do that without time. That's okay.
I guess my only thing is that I've heard, right, of 3 potential, preschoolers pre-Kers that are already enrolled that are now looking to homeschool. So I guess I feel like until the data's there to make a final decision, but I agree with this, because 16 in that room would be difficult to begin with. So I don't know.
So you could make it a tentative motion, right? And then we set the number. I think
If it
personally,
comes back and there's only 14 kids actually gonna be there, because that many people are holding them back or homeschooling, then
I would probably still split them at 14, just
Yeah.
because they're 3 4-year-olds.
yeah,
If we get down to 12 or below, I think maybe that's doable.
okay.
So maybe you set your number at more than 12.
Our preschool numbers have been going up pretty consistently over the last several years. And if we hire, is there another classroom to put some of these kids in?
There used to be, huh?
It would be AM, PM, so it'd be the same classroom.
Oh,
It would be
Okay.
AM, PM.
Okay. I think this is really important because we've been monitoring these preschool growth data for quite a few years, and we're increasingly getting young families in, and enrollments have been going up pretty regularly. So I guess you need a motion? Is that?
Yes, we do.
Then I guess I would make a motion. To add a half-day pre-K session for Dr. Levesque Elementary School.
If the numbers are above 12.
Alright.
Are you
Yes.
okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second? Josh? Okay. Any more questions?
And is this 4 or 5 days, are we talking about that right now too, or are we deciding that?
I think we can let that be a school administration decision. I think Cheryl and Tracy can talk about that and let them decide. I think you guys would be supportive either way.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions? If not, we'll take a vote in favor.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor. And next is the declaration and computation of votes for the 2020-21 school budget and signed assessments. Someone has to read this, so?
Yeah.
Okay. Josh, you want to read?
Order that the computation declaration of the votes dated July 27th and attached here to be approved. Further voted that the computation and declaration be on the record of the main school administrative district number 33. Further voted that a certified copy of the computation and votes be sent to each of the municipal clerks within the district.
Is there a second on that?
Okay, so that was the motion. Is there a second, Gerard? Okay. Any questions? Okay, in favor? All in favor? Okay, so we'll need to sign
You'll need to sign it.
for the document.
Do you have to sign the same line or?
That one doesn't matter, and this one, your name's on the line, so. This is the assessment that was sent to the parents.
we'll have to get Jean's signature later. Because she's in the meeting, so Jean will, we'll make arrangements for you to sign.
Okay.
The only thing that I just wanted to, you'll notice at the bottom of the agenda, our next regular scheduled meeting is August 31. Did the board wish to meet sooner to look at some of the survey data about what's happening with school? And, did you want to meet before the high school starts, which means we would have to meet next week or Monday or Tuesday of the following week? I just wanted to know what you guys thought about that.
Does it, what do you feel about that?
How soon are we getting those, surveys?
They're going out tomorrow, first thing, and, we'll have to give it, a few days for sure, to see what's going on. How about Monday, the 17th? That's, school hasn't started yet, but we're a few days. Would that be something that works for you guys?
Yeah.
And do we do a 5:30 again, or should we go back to 6?
6.
6?
6 is better for me, I don't know about the rest, so. What's that?
6 or 6:30. I guess 6 works for me.
Yeah.
So let's go Monday, the 17th at 6.
And here,
And we'll go to Wisdom because it'll be starting up, and you can take a walk through the school and see some of the changes. That is it. Thank you all so much.
I'll need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to go home.
Mr. Hart, second. Yes, second, and, everybody in favor of going home? Yeah.
Thank you, Jean.
Yep, thank you.
you.